discuss on soul system and anything about women. So it means or implies that the woman is right at the center of our conversations. So from our mental health to her pockets and financial health, if you know what I mean, to her growth, development, everything that the woman can learn and benefit from. And of course, the soul brothers are always appreciated. Thank you for always listening and sometimes chipping in. And thank you for being a part of the Smooth family. So Wednesdays, 11 till 11:50. This is what we get to on Smooth 98.1. My name is Oluwaseun Olusegun. And if you're a part of our family, especially if you are following us across all social media platforms, you would have seen the flyer ahead of time, either on Instagram, on Twitter, or even if you're a part of our WhatsApp family, where we uploaded it to our status. So that is 0809-444-0981 in case you want to join the WhatsApp family. What you just need to do is send me your name and your location, and we'll go right ahead to adding you and your contact to our WhatsApp so that you can always view our status and, well, maybe we can check yours out as well. So this morning, we are talking about something very interesting in a lot of ways, and you'll get to find out even why it is more interesting as we proceed with the conversation. We're talking about starting afresh in another country. Some say starting all over in another country, especially as a woman. After all, this is Soul Sisters. And if you have questions, it's okay if you start to scribble them. And if you want to be a part of the conversations, WhatsApp line is 0809-444-0981. Again, 0809-444-0981. And the call line is 02-01-448-9981. Now, my guest wears a lot of hats, and primarily, or as touching this conversation, she's an immigration consultant. But beyond that, she is a senior executive. She's a social entrepreneur. She's a celebrated, not just any kind of children's author. She's a celebrated children's author and a speaker, as well as a podcast host. In, I think, February, earlier this year, she was awarded 2 Ontario government acknowledgement by the legislative ruling government for her work on inclusion and diversity in Canada and Oakville, Ontario Community Spirit, which is based on the works of her books. Now, she holds a diploma in immigration consultancy, and she's a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Also, she's very and highly conversant in immigration consultancy across other regions. Now, by training, she's a business economist, and she has years of experience as a management consultant, and she's an alumnus of the University of Warwick, as well as the University of Reading. And she's got a number of degrees from those universities. So please make welcome with me my guest, an immigration consultant, a business executive, an author, as well as a speaker. She is Olamidotun Votu-Bada. Good morning. Now you're muted.
Hi, morning.
Thank you. I think it's quite important to point it out that she's also joining me all the way from Canada. And I guess it's only right that we talk about that as well. So a very fresh morning to you.
Yeah, it's fresh. It's like it's 6 a.m. where I am. It's 6 a.m. So it's pretty early, but I say to people that I'm used to this. Maybe because of my work, I'm used to this already.
Oh, speaking of Canada, Monday was Thanksgiving Day.
Yes, it was. It was a holiday for us.
Yeah. How did that go?
It was okay. It was just like a normal Nigerian public holiday, But it's different here because public holidays, nothing opens, no stores, everything just shuts down. So it's quite different for us here.
And do you do the whole turkey frying, chicken, or you get to make your own dishes?
Yeah, people do. So some people do it on Saturday, some people do it on Sunday. Turkey, you sit down, you have the whole dinner with family, people travel. So it's really nice. It's actually quite nice. It's nice to have a holiday. Holidays are not very popular when you live abroad like Nigeria, where there's a holiday for everything. So just to say that.
So if I were to intrude into your personal life just a teeny tiny bit, and if I should ask, because it was Thanksgiving, what is one thing that you would say you're very thankful for in the year 2024?
I think I'm just thankful for life. I'm thankful for life. I always say that where there's life, there's hope. Where you have the opportunity to wake up to see another day, that means that the opportunities are endless, and you can't just start right and just trust God. So I'm just thankful for life this year, which is what I always am. Thankful for life and thankful for the opportunities, and thankful that every day is an opportunity to restart again. So I think it sounds funny, but trust me, it's a lot to be thankful for. Life and health.
Yeah, I agree with you, definitely. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, this is Soul Sisters, and this morning I told you it's going to be a very interesting conversation because we're discussing starting all over or starting afresh in another country. And my guest is an immigration consultant as well as an author. So stay with us because when we come back, we will get into first understanding how she's able to do so much, and then her book series, as well as some of the do's and don'ts that you should be aware of if you want to just japa, as we say it over here. You're listening to Smooth 98.1. So we have a quick ad break, just some seconds, and then we'll be back.
That's fine. Are you okay with the orientation of my
your video?
Yes. Are you okay with it this way, or do you
Yeah,
want me
this
to go
works.
this way?
This works.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine. Okay.
The way this country is currently, I think everyone is starting afresh every day.
I know. You have to start afresh every day. That you have to have that perspective. And I say to people that it's not just people think the way everything is just in Nigeria, but it's actually everywhere.
Okay, so I'm going to need you to increase the volume of that when we get on air, because it's something I often say. You know what? We're back on air. Love music and love life. You are listening to Soul Sisters on Smooth 98.1. Now, this is what I will tell you. When you're listening to any of the shows and I tell you that we're streaming live on YouTube, I dare say that you should run to YouTube because you get to have the behind the scenes, the juices, the sprinkles, and the extra gists there. So you should totally stream live at the website and also stream on YouTube, youtube.com/smooth 91 FM Lagos. In other words, our handle on YouTube is at smooth 91 FM Lagos. Now, before I get into the conversation, which a lot of people are itching to get into, what do I do if I want to japa? But first, you do a lot of things. You're an author, like I mentioned, you're an entrepreneur, you're a speaker. I mean, I see a lovely microphone right there. And you're a podcast host. You write books, especially for children. So here comes $1 million questions. How are you able to balance everything? Especially as you have to probably do things across time zones.
I mean, for me, I always say, just like what I said at the start, I'm very thankful for life. And because I'm very reflective of life, I see that everyone is given an opportunity. The rich and the poor, they have the same 24 hours. It's just a question of what you do with your 24 hours. So I'm very big on living a full, rich life. And so rich doesn't necessarily mean money. It means using your gifts. I believe very strongly in we're all giving gifts to benefit the world around us. So with that perspective, when I have an idea to do something, I'm like, okay, how can I make this work? Because I have a gift that's been given to the world in my generation. So how can I make that work? Whether it's my 9 to 5 as an immigration consultant, or thinking to myself, I probably will not write children's books until when I'm much older, and realizing that there was a need and starting to write books much earlier in my life and using my voice to speak and inspire people. So everything comes from that belief system that every single person on this earth has an importance, right? And so we're given as a gift. So for me, juggling it just means I have to make it work. It's a gift and I have to keep giving. So yeah, I have crazy days when I wake up early. Today, it's 6 a.m. I'm on a meeting. For me to be here at 6 a.m., I've probably woken up 2 hours earlier, or I have kids, I have 3 kids, or writing my books. some seasons that are more important than others. Like right now, I'm in a season where writing is becoming so tough. So I'm having to do like 1 hour a day. It's all about the consistency. So I'd rather do 1 hour a day and get 30 hours of writing out in a month than be looking for how to sit down in one day to write. So it's all about making the time for what is important. That's what I do, and that's how I'm able to prioritize it.
So you could have written for anyone. Why children?
Um, I think I'm very, first of all, I'm very passionate. I don't know why. I think I'm very passionate about children, but I think if I think of the journey, how I started my journey into writing, it's part of the Jackpot. I think it was a part of the whole Jackpot thing. So just as a background, I'm quite knowledgeable in immigration because I've had the experience of living in different parts of the world. So like when I was 18, my parents sent me off to England by myself, and then I lived many years in England. And then I've had the opportunity of living briefly in the US. And then in 2020, just before the pandemic, I didn't even know the pandemic was coming. I moved my kids to Canada because I was looking to expand my business in immigration and things like that. So I moved to Canada, and as we got here, my younger daughter, I try and encourage my kids to read. So my younger daughter at the time was 7, and she reads a lot of history. So she's the kind of child that you would ask, who's Martin Luther King or who is Rosa Parks? Like she knows all these characters because she's always reading. Maybe it's the kind of content that I've encouraged her to read. I don't know, but she really, I mean, my 2 kids like history. But imagine in the pandemic, everybody was locked in. They were reading a lot. And then she started asking me questions like, "Oh, mommy, why aren't there inspiring African people?" I was like, "Of course, they're inspiring African people. Yeah, they are." And she was like, "No, I don't mean like the people that everybody knows, like the Nelson Mandelas and the Martin Luther King. Aren't there other people that we don't know, like people that make an impact in Nigeria? Do you understand? In Nigeria or in Ghana or in South Africa?" And I was like, of course there are. But it's funny. I obviously couldn't find the books. I then thought, okay, let's go find the books. And I couldn't find it. Of course, you will find content videos online, but they weren't appropriate for children. So it was a very interesting, you thought they were available, but they actually weren't. And I tried to tell her the story of like MKO, for instance, and I realized that there was no book that had broken it down in a way that she could understand. And that was the light bulb moment for me. I thought I have to change this narrative. And if you ask any Gen Z, like, I mean, someone that's like 22, 24, most of them don't know these characters. They don't know I mean, they know some of them, but they don't know the history. And the truth is, just like what I said, everybody is a gift. These people have lived their lives. There are things we can learn from them. I like history. I like biographies a lot. So I thought I have to change this. Children have to learn from these characters so that we can make Africa a better place. So I decided to take the stories of inspiring African people and retell them for children. Specifically for children because I'm very passionate about children. And also obviously I wanted to help my daughter read something that she could learn from. You know what I mean? And that's really how the journey started.
Hmm, that's interesting. Now, what I think I also want to get into is the choice of the characters. You've already explained part of the reasons why you had to pick people that are not talked about every day. And you picked MKO Abiola, you picked Erling Johnson Sirleaf. Now, what are maybe just some things that stood out from their lives that made you say, okay, I think I should write about MKO for the children. I think I should write about Erling Johnson Sirleaf for them. What were some of those outstanding things that you felt people needed to know about them?
I think that for me, it comes from a place, and people ask me, look, like some people say to me, have you thought of Jamaican characters? People always coming to me with characters because right now I've only done 3 characters. I also have Fela's story. So I've also retold Fela's story, which is really new. And this month we're pushing it based on the whole celebration thing. For me, it comes from a place of I look for the characters that people, I would say you're almost forgotten, right? They've made a huge significant contribution in Africa, but sometimes people focus on the negative part of their story, and people don't understand that these people had significant impact. So for instance, I remember when I did Fela's story. Fela's story, I would say, was the hardest story I had to tell because everybody thinks of it in a negative light. But as I am intrigued by his story when I had to tell it for children because and it's a new we only released Fela's story like May this year. I'm intrigued by it and I had to get the approval from the family. I'm intrigued by it because I wanted to know what makes this guy tick. You can't tell the story of politics in Nigeria without putting Fela in there. He had so much significant impact. And I was like, and his mother was, I mean, they did a movie about his mom recently. His mother was huge. So I thought to myself, this guy's learner, there's something more to him. So these are the kind of things that I think about. How can I take this character's story and twist it for children to be able to take the positives out of it and not focus on the negative? So right now, I have Winnie Mandela's story. Everybody knows Winnie Mandela. You can't tell Nelson Mandela without telling Winnie Mandela. Most people say Winnie Mandela's story went the other way around, went negative. But I say to people, you can't tell Nelson Mandela without telling Winnie Mandela. So why don't we tell the positive impact that she made in his story? Another one, I'm currently doing Nnamdi Azikiwe's story for children. He's the first, leader of Nigeria. How is it that a child in the diaspora can't even tell you about those characters? Or a Kofi Annan who was like head of UN. I picked the stories that people somehow forget, but they made a significant impact in the global sector. And that's how I picked those characters. We finished 3 and I have several in draft. And every time people are like, oh, you should write this, I was like, I wish I could write all. But for me, it's just all about picking characters that can make a positive impact to children.
Thank you. All right, so we have talked a little bit about your author side. Let's move over to the side that is attracting already questions on WhatsApp and someone asking, how can you be of help as regards migrating to Canada? And that's a question these days that we ask. And so I would like to start this way. Because of the hardship, of course, because of the inflation and many other things that seem to be combating Nigerians, or Nigerians are combating rather, it looks like it just makes perfect sense for all of us to up and leave. So, number one, as an immigration consultant and someone who lives in Canada as well, who has been in a number of countries, what are some of the reasons why you first will say, don't leave because of this? And then why should a person decide to consider relocation?
So it's funny because I'm not biased to any country, and maybe because I'm a generalist in immigration. So I'm not just interested in Canadian immigration, I'm interested in immigration across board. And also because my background too, I initially read economics. So I understand, I say to people, economics and immigration, it's like hand in hand, right? The first reason I would say to somebody, don't live, the first thing I would say is, first of all, a goat is a goat wherever he goes. A lion is a lion wherever he goes. A rat is a rat wherever he goes. It has to start from the mindset. It starts from the mindset. So what does that mean? I understand that things are tough in Nigeria, but I also say to people that don't forget, things are also tough in all these other countries. The one thing that's probably going well for those that are abroad is obviously the exchange rate is great. You can change money and then you're a billionaire in Nigeria if you just change. You know what I mean? But the truth is, it's tough everywhere. And I liken this to people because if you look at most countries right now, especially Canada, I'll use Canada as a case study. Recently, they started tightening their immigration policies.
Yeah.
And the reason why countries will tighten their policies is because technically no country is allowed to come and tell you, don't come to my country. They're not allowed to. They're meant to have an open border system. But if somebody doesn't want you to come to their house, what do? They start to tell you, if you're going to come to my house, remove your shoe at the door. If you're going to come, make sure you tie your scarf. What will you say as a visitor? You say, I'm not even going again. This wahala is too much. Is that not what you would say?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happens with immigration. When you see countries begin to tighten up, it's because things are tough for them inside. And so they're trying to protect their own people. For instance, inflation is high in Canada. For instance, there's high unemployment. Housing prices are going up. People can't buy homes. These are the things that people are not telling you. So what the government will do is they will tighten their border because they need to protect their people inside. Technically, what they're telling you is don't come. Stay where you are. Obviously, people will still try and come, but obviously the best of what they're saying is we're going to attract the best of the best that can afford to make that sacrifice. So the first thing is, if you're a lion wherever you go, you're a rat wherever you go, you need to understand that it's not about jack buying, because if you don't correct that mindset, no matter where you go, you're still going to go there, e.g., go to Canada and still feel stuck because the economy is going through the same recession. Maybe it's harder for us in Nigeria, but you're still going to go there and get stuck, right? So it first starts with your mindset. So you're going, what are you going there to do? What impact are you going to make? Are you going, there has to be a mission, which is why we tell people in immigration, if you're migrating or you're jackpotting, there has to be a mission. Are you going there for study so you can improve yourself? Are you going there for financial gain? Obviously, if you're going there for financial gain, you know you're going there to work. Because guess what? Abroad, we all know you work, they charge you, you get paid per hour. Well, some jobs will pay you a salary at the end of the month. 50% of the job is per hour. So if you are that person that is like, you're laid back, you're lazy, and you decide, guess what? You will suffer at the end of the month because you didn't put in the hours. So it's a mindset. It all starts from the mind. I know Nigeria is tough, but we all know that there's there are people that are still hitting, achieving great things in Nigeria. Some people relocate and say, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna improve myself and then go back. Fantastic. But you have to first start with, why am I going and what is my plan? If you don't have a plan and you're just going to jackpot because your friend is jackpotting, trust me, the same thing that's affecting you in Nigeria is going to affect you where you're going, right? It has to start with, what is my why? Why am I migrating to where I'm going, and what is the game plan? When I get there, am I prepared to do the work? Am I prepared for harsh conditions? The weather is horrible. It's not a very nice weather. I'm telling you, there are mornings when you're thinking, oh, wow, what did I get myself? You don't want to get out of bed, you know? In Canada, for instance, once you enter the winter, by 5 p.m., it's, what may we say, for 4:30, it's pitch dark. And somebody is telling you, see, you're still at work, it's pitch dark. Those things are real. You're shuffling the snow. When it's so cold, your hands are stiff. The reality, it's real everywhere. It's just a question of where are you going to pay the price. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So, and if somebody said they were going to relocate, I would say to them, once you decide this is my why, I'm going to relocate, then obviously you have to do the right research. So there's so many countries right now. I know Canada is tightening, but there's so many of them, so many opportunities. Do your research. In fact, I'm an immigration consultant, yes, but I say the best person to sit down, and the internet is so amazing right now because you can sit down, begin to ask yourself. And please, one thing I say to people, don't follow all those. I see a lot of ghost people that come with funny videos on Instagram. And I'm like, you're not giving people the full information. They're like, immigrate to Canada by just being a driver. I'm like, no, that information is wrong. Or immigrate to Germany and go and be a carpenter. I'm like, no, that information is wrong. In between that immigrate, there's a lot of fine details, right? So you don't necessarily have to pay an immigration consultant. If you do, obviously you come to people like us, I mean, where I work. But it's about doing the research. Decide where you want to go. Some places, some countries, you can get your citizenship in 3 years, some countries in 4 years. Some people are not bothered about citizenship. They just want to go there for the livelihood. So you have to decide, where am I going? Which country am I going? And which, some people will tell you, I don't want to go to Canada. I can't deal with the cold. That rules out certain things for you. Some people, and I know this platform is for women, some people will tell you, my husband is not going to go. My husband is going to stay in Nigeria. Obviously, that means you don't want to be going far. You don't want to be relocating to China if your husband is not going. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Let me interrupt you there a bit and just keep the remaining in the cooler. And when we come back after this, we'll pick up from where we left it because there is so much to uncover. If you're joining us for the first time, this is Soul Sisters on Smooth 98.1, and we are talking about starting afresh in another country. Stay with us.
Sorry, did I go on?
Oh, that's totally fine. So when we come back from the breather, we will continue with. So I had to pause, interrupt there because that is a very juicy part
Yeah.
where families and so are sometimes, I wouldn't say broken, but it's like one person now starts to live as a single person, another person has to carry the load somehow. Yes, you might get the finances from the other half, wherever they are, but then I don't think people think about that as much. They don't
Yeah.
really understand the implications until they get there. Maybe you now have to go with 3 children or 2 children, and it's just you. That's a lot.
It's a key determining factor, right? Some people, from some people, everybody's situation is different, right? But I always say to people, you have to pick your battles. You have to, because Canada is huge, right? But certain places are further away than the others in Canada, for instance. There are places that when you get, it's like saying you get to Lagos, and when you get to Lagos, you have to start going to Akure. So it adds to the journey. So for you, maybe you're relocating, you have to tell yourself, it's better I stay in Lagos, it's better I stay in Toronto, where the journey is easier for my husband. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of conversations are things that families need to have, and I always say to people to have.
Yeah. All right.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Something's at the door. Just 1 second.
Love music, love life. You are listening to Soul Sisters. I was about to say Film Focus, but then Film Focus is not till Friday. Every Friday from 11 till 11:55, we get to discussing about movies, series, animations, and documentaries. Really everything that you can enjoy on your screen from 11 till 11:55. That's the duration of the show. And of course, I don't get to do it alone. I have you as well as my analyst, and we also review movies as well. However, on Wednesdays from 11 till 11:50, what we do is talk about women and everything relating to women. Today, we are examining the conversation of starting afresh in another country, and everybody's welcome to this conversation. If you have questions, contributions, agreements, disagreements, as I would often say, you can send your WhatsApp messages or even dial 0201 448 9981. Again, 0201 448 9981. While the WhatsApp line is 0809 444 0981. Again, 0809 444 0981. We're streaming live on YouTube so that you can not just see this, but also keep it and maybe share with someone. Maybe you can go back to it in case right now you are in your coconut head era and you are not listening to any form of advice coming from anyone else. Now take the advice and the information coming from my guest today, who is an immigration consultant as well as an author, and she is Olamidotun Votu-Bada. Or Bada rather. Now, before the breather, we were talking about some of the factors to consider before you decide to up and leave to another country. And she mentioned that you must consider your why. So let's pick up from where we left off. And that is for married people, some of the things you need to factor in before you choose the country to relocate to. So you were talking about the woman, the man, the children, and so on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes,
I
please
can
go
hear you.
ahead.
Okay. So I was saying that just as we went on, and I want to say thank you so much for having me. I've totally enjoyed the conversation so far. But what I was saying is, for people, when you're considering relocating, you can't, it can't be my friend is doing it, so I have to do it, especially with people that have families, people that have children. It's a very, I would say, unique situation, because like we're saying when we're off air, somebody has, if you have 2 kids, or for instance, you're going outside because, okay, financial gain, let's earn in FX, so that we can have a better quality of life. The reality is that it is going to be a strain, and it's a strain. However, you look at it, and I always say to myself that I'm a good example. I've got 3 kids. My husband shuttles. But when you understand, okay, this is the peculiarity of our family, you don't want to add more strain to it. So what do I mean? When you're picking a country you want to go to a country that in terms of travel, it's easier. So some people will tell you, "Oh, I'd rather go to England because England is 6 hours away. My husband and I were in the same time zone." And no matter what you tell them, even if they tell, like for instance, in terms of immigration, getting a British passport takes a longer time than getting a Canadian passport. So some of my friends say, no matter what you tell them, I'm comfortable with England because yes, we get a better quality of life. It may take me longer to get my passport, but look, 6 hours is easy for my husband to up and travel once a month and come. When you throw in the dynamics of Canada, using Canada as an example, Canada is what? 13, 2 planes away from Nigeria. No matter what you do, you're going to take 2 flights, 2 planes. 13 minimum. The closest city to Nigeria, I would say Toronto, for instance, is going to take you at least 16 hours. You would go first leg 6 hours, another leg 8 hours, 14, but let's just say 14 hours. Now, like what I was saying to you on air, when you then, off air, when you then consider, it's like saying I'm Lagos, the city, everybody knows Lagos. But if you're going to Akure or Abuja, when you get to Lagos, then you add another flight to get to Abuja or to Akure or to Osun State or to Benin. That is the point. The point is, you don't want to go to a city that it makes it hard for your spouse to then think, I'm going home, and it's like every time I go, the flight is expensive. It's gonna take me 24 hours to get there. So somebody like you, obviously, like me, I don't live far from Toronto. I live, very close because I understand the dynamics of the travel for my family. So there's nothing anybody was going to tell me. I was not going to go anywhere far. There's some cities that are really far in Canada. When you get to Toronto, you take another 4 hours flight. For my reality, I knew that wasn't a reality because I didn't want to cause additional strain to my family. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So when you're considering location, you have to think about that. It's already stressful because one person has, if you're going to be having a shared family, and there has to be a lot of intentionality to it. I have a very good friend of mine. The rule where the husband shuttles, the rule in their family is the husband was almost be home for birthdays and all key holidays. So birthdays, Christmas, New Year. It's expensive. Think about that. When you think of birthdays, they have 3 kids, New Year, Christmas, Thanksgiving. That is the ruling, and that's the sacrifice they've chosen to make. Because for them is we may not always be together, but those significant days we have to make it work, right? And that's the rule. And I think they have, some people will tell you rules like don't be out of connection with each other 6 weeks, 2 months. But I know that there are peculiarities where the spouses, because that cost of tickets is a lot. So those are special people that can afford it. But then reality is where the spouse is gone for 1 year, 2 years. I've heard of all sorts of cases. But understand, we're talking to women here. The body has its needs, right? So if you know that your spouse is going to be gone for 1 year, 2 years, that's a question you have to ask yourself. Am I prepared for conversations under that 1 year, 2 years that I can't talk about, but can possibly happen? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Yep.
So it's a very, if you can't make those sacrifices like my friend where they've prioritized holidays and birthdays and every 2 months or 6 weeks they have to see each other, then you have to say 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, what is going to happen in that middle? It's a conversation the family needs to have. I know couples that have said, or people that have said, look, I can't make that sacrifice. I would rather stay with my family. If we're going to drink Gary, let's drink this Gary together. And guess what? That is what makes a family. And that's where the blessing is, right? If we're going to let's do this together. If we're going to stay in Nigeria, the husband says, I can't go. Then we do it together and we just have to trust the hand of God. But immigration is a strain, and this is a conversation that you need to have as a family.
That is a lot. And thank you for highlighting that, because I want to assume that for someone, it's going to give them clarity and also help them to narrow their choices. Now, going further into family, because that's something that is key in this conversation, I'm thinking about raising children, and I'm thinking about families that are relocating with toddlers or relocating with children who are maybe 4 or 5. How do you, for the lack of a better word, raise them in a new environment where maybe some things are not applicable, and I'll use one. There are many stories online about how, oh no, you cannot flog your child in another country. If they do, they're going to take your child away from you and so on. How are you able to still keep your family tight, especially if you are not in the same location with your husband or your wife and all that? Then the choice of school, and then we go to the job. But first, raising children small in a new environment. How do you go about that?
I think what I would say is community is very important, and I want to take this away from us Nigerians for us to understand it so that you're able to see what I mean. If when you're abroad, when you see like an Indian, right, or a Chinese person, when you see them talk to their children, yes, they speak all this English and all those things. They speak Indian, I mean, the language to their children, Chinese, they speak it. Like, it's not hidden. So, first of all, community and making your children always understand this is our culture, this is who we are. No matter where we go, this is our culture and this is what we stand for. You know, that is the first thing. And a lot of us Nigerians, you go abroad and you're like, no, I want to over modernize things. No, that is the foundation of who you are. That is what makes us who you are. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So if a Chinese and an Indian can imbibe those cultures in their children, there's something that, I mean, especially Japanese, there's something that it's important that you also need to imbibe. So I would say start with this is our culture. So for instance, in my my kids, I say to them, I mean, here, you call adults by their first name. And I said to my kids, one of their friends called me one day and said, oh, hi, good morning, Ola, a child. I said, me, you're calling by my first name. I said, I don't understand it. I mean, I had to have the conversation with my kids. I said to them, and this is the perspective, I said, our culture prioritizes respect, and respect opens the door for you. That's simple. You don't go to somebody, whether they are Chinese, Indian, you call them Mrs., Mr. I don't care. That is not, it is our culture. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. And it's something that is important. Respect. How dare you? I'm an adult. You're calling by my first name. Are you joking? My child is your mate. You understand what I'm saying? So those are little things that my children. So for instance, I mean, I teach my children. It's funny, we say kneel down, but I tell my kids it's courtesy. You stand up, you curtsy, it's courtesy. This my kids, when you see an elderly person, you curtsy. You don't stand up and say hi. I will knock that hand down. But guess what? I have brought it to the terms of culture, and I've brought it to the terms of understanding in this day and age. Obviously, if I told them you kneel down, they'll be like, what's that? But I told them you curtsy. At least they understand courtesy, right? So that's simple. And I told them when you see a grandma, you go the full courtesy, you go all the way down. They're like, I say, yes, because you have to respect. And respect opens the doors for you. So when your children understand those things, and then you start early. You start from a young age. You don't want to start that when your child is 16. You start from, I mean, my husband has a funny joke. He says, in our house is Nigerian embassy. It's very funny. It's a funny joke. And I say to I said, when you get outside, you can do whatever you want. In this house is Nigerian territory because our values and our culture is what has made us who we are. And unless people are winning by those Mexicans, Chinese, Indians are winning by those principles. So how do you want to make it different? You start from when they are small. It's funny. I mean, my kids, I have 12, and something funny happened yesterday, 12, 9, and 3. My daughters, in the morning, it's a principle. I don't care what, you kneel down, you greet your parents, right? And obviously, I've not started teaching my 3-year-old that. But it was funny because yesterday, her sister saw her in the morning, and I saw her kneeling down to greet her sister, and I just had a good laugh. I had a good laugh because she's only 3, but guess what? She's understanding it already. These things are small, but you have to start it from when they're young. If they train up a child in the way that they should go, when they're old, they won't depart from it. You start from when they're small and you make them understand culture is important. This is who we stand for. This is our family values. This is what makes us. This is why it has brought us this far. If you want to invite somebody else's culture, you're going to run into trouble. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. That was very good. And it sounds to me like before you even leave here, before you relocate anywhere, you need to be very clear about your identity, who you are, because if you're not clear about it before you export it, you're going to lose everything. Thank you. Now, I want to cross over to another thing that again sometimes makes the round on social media. And it's about how when you go abroad, maybe you go to the UK and so on, that some people that are supposed to be your brothers or your sisters sometimes get snobbish. And there you are trying to relate with familiar faces or known faces based on the color, based on the skin, the accent, and so on. So, in terms of making friends or trying to find your community or tribe, what would be your recommendations and advice? Maybe trying to link up with fellow Nigerians or trying to make friends. How do you go about it?
Um, it's funny. I think this goes to when you're in, they say when you're in Rome, you behave like a Roman, right? Um, uh, so it's a very funny thing because I do know that what people say exists, right? I understand that. I've seen it. I've had people tell stories. I've had people not maybe not necessarily experienced it, but I've had somebody close to me say the same thing, and I've seen it happen. But what I say to people is everybody's different, right? But the first underlining thing is when you're in Rome, you behave like a Roman. The best way, and this really speaks to in terms of immigration and integrating, and I would say this about immigration, the best way to integrate into a culture is when you come in, you have to understand their system. Okay, how do they work? So let me give you an example. So, and this is how we'll connect with relating to people. For instance, here, workplace, you call your boss by first name and things like that. Or there are certain things that you do in terms of workplace where in Nigeria it seems a bit awkward, but when you live abroad, you have to do maybe like Friday hang out with your team or certain things. You know what I mean? Now, what
Mm-hmm.
tends to happen with Nigerians is we come in and we want to bring in our old way we do things into this culture. What that means is it's going to be hard for you to integrate. It shuts things down. So for most people, for instance, you go into a workplace, let's say you get into a workplace, you're a Nigerian, you see another Nigerian, maybe you knew the person before, and automatically you feel like, oh, we're Nigerian now, let's start speaking Yoruba in during the workplace, during meetings. Of course, the other person is trying to integrate and be when I'm in room, I behave like a woman. But you're trying to be Niger and speak Yoruba in meetings. Guess what's gonna happen? The person is gonna want to shut down and be like, I don't know you. Don't come and spoil my workplace because I'm finally integrating in. So sometimes it might be somebody trying to integrate in and somebody else is trying to behave like full Niger in the
Mm-hmm.
system. So but that's one of the things I think people, it's all about integration. Yes, those things exist and there are extreme situations, but it's if you're in Rome, you have to behave like a Roman. You have to find your way to integrate. And if you feel like somebody is giving you that vibe, guess what? Step away, move away, find your own tribe. Community is important. Like what I was trying to explain that when you find your own tribe, and community does not necessarily mean it has to be everybody that is Nigerian. There are people. I remember I had a neighbor who the wife was Chinese and the husband, I think husband was Canadian or something. They were full on culture people, very cultural family. They believed in respect and all of those. That is community. You know what I mean? So find your tribe and find your community, and it will help you in terms of integrating. And when you're migrating, and of course, do the right research. And I mean, I hope I've answered that question.
You have. Thank you. Now, as we draw to the end of this conversation, I would like us to touch on finances and how you find your feet financially. Again, we cannot take away the importance of doing your research. So let's say in a case where the husband is the one that had the, should I say, means, maybe got the job or something like that. And because of that, the whole family had to move. As a woman, how can you know, establish yourself? What kind of job should you look at, especially if you're unable to get something in line with what it is you were doing here already? Because we've probably heard of people, let me not say we've heard, I know of people who have had to start to be healthcare workers and do something else. So, in terms of trying to establish yourself financially, what should you look at, and what are some of the information and tips that can help you start over again?
I would say that, and this is the beauty of maybe living abroad. Things are not I would say they're not like it's not oh like this is the way and so you have to follow it that way. When you're living abroad, there's certain things that are open to you. So I have a friend, for instance, where she works, but she works in the evening, right? So because she has to stay at home with the kids, her kids are young, she had to find a job that allows her to work in the evening. I have another one who does a job online. So there's certain jobs that you may be able to do because you're living abroad. Internet is good. Certain things are good. You may be able to get there are a lot of part-time opportunities. You might have to retrain. I mean, living abroad is that's one way to thrive, retrain. So maybe if your husband is the primary breadwinner of the family, so you might have to retrain and say, okay, what should I consider? There's certain people that would even say, oh, look, you can even start to, in terms of selling, people do things like selling on Amazon, selling on online platforms. You begin to generate revenue because you have to take care of the family. You retrain, you do part-time hours. You might have to just change things a little bit, but it is doable, especially when you live abroad. You just need to find what works for you and what you're passionate about. Also, for instance, I know in Canada, they have what they call in schools, they will tell you, do you want to come and like work in the schools 2 hours a day, and they pay you, as a parent. It's like a parent staff, and they pay you. So those are things that in Nigeria it's not available, but abroad those things are available, and you just have to put your head to the ground and say, okay, what do I want to do? How many hours do I want to work to be able to support my family? But it is very, very doable.
Thank you. Now, lest we leave out the single people, especially the single lady, the single girl who's gone over there. Maybe she's schooling and at the same time working, and it's almost like work, school, maybe no time for dating, and she hopes to settle someday. What would be any advice or recommendation for her to just make sure that she has a balanced life?
Once again, I would say it's back to the same thing, which is um community. I mean, I can't over stress that living abroad, because it can get very lonely. And this is I can't even say, because people say, oh, it's boring. It's not like Nigeria where there's always something to do, there's always a party to go, there's always something to do on Friday. And your community starts from, for instance, your church, your religious environment where you are. Community starts from intentionally your workplace, making sure. I mean, I have friends that are not married that they will say, oh, Friday hangouts, everybody from work. You intentionally attend those because you don't know where you're going to meet somebody, Or I have another friend who intentionally plans. She doesn't have time a lot. She plans travel trips because you're abroad. So it's easy for you to say, I'm going to this city and I'm going to that city. And you go at off-peak periods because it's cheaper for you, because maybe children are in school, so they will sell the tickets cheaper. So that's what she does. She goes at off-peak periods to just find time to just unwind. Very big on community, very big on connecting with other people at work. You can't just be an island, because abroad living can be very, very quiet. And then other things like, example, in Canada, we have the Nigerian community. You have to find your tribe. You have to find your own people. You can't isolate yourself. It's just very important.
And we have come to the end of this conversation. It's been such a beautiful one. Thank you for dishing out so much wisdom and, of course, letting us drink from that fountain of consultancy as an immigration consultant. Now, if there is anything we have left out and you would just want to say, in terms of thinking about relocating abroad or relocating somewhere else, what are just one do and one don't?
So I would say, in terms of relocating, I would say the first thing to do, and you must do, is your research. You have to do that research. There's a lot of information out there. If you're stuck, and I say be very careful and be very wary of a lot of the quick fixes that they put online these days. They say, oh, you have to, there's a loophole. Be very careful and be very wary. If you're stuck and you don't know what to do, have a short consultation with a trained immigration consultant. And I say that a lot because there are a lot of agents. And it's funny when people call me, they say, oh, I'm like, I'm not an agent. I'm trained to do my work. Find time with a trained immigration, even if it's a 1 hour, 2 hour consultation. A lot of them offer that. They may not be able to afford to say, oh, do my full application, but a lot of them can offer 1 hour, 2 hour consultations so that you are able to know what to do. And if you can afford it, pay them to get the work done. But do your research. Consider the peculiarity of your family. Everybody's family is different. Don't just up and go and say, I'm looking for more money. After you have the money, then what next? What will be left? Would you be spending the money on your own in a house on your own? So look at the peculiarities of your family and make a decision based on that. Don't just follow your friend somewhere. Look at the region you want to go and pick. But guess what? If you choose to stay in Nigeria, it starts with the mindset. It all starts with the mindset. And I know that we will all be successful wherever we go.
Thank you. I feel like somebody is waiting for me to get to the part where I ask you, and so how much do you need to have in your account for you to relocate? No, this is not the conversation for it. Thank you. Now, for people to check out what you do, the books you write, the inspiration you share on social media and other platforms, what's your handle?
Okay, so for my books, you need to go to My Inspire Books. So go online, whether it's a website, www.myinspirebooks.com, or look on Instagram, My Inspire Books. And then for immigration, my work, just look for, it's a bit of a tricky name, Philly Magna. So if you look for Philly Magna online, Philly Magna, whether it's Canada or whether it's other regions, or www.philly. So Philly is Phillimagna. So Phillimagna. And there you can find, even if you don't want to speak to me, you want to speak to other consultants, I think we're more than capable.
Thank you. And you have been listening to my guest, who's not just an immigration consultant, she's also a business executive. She's an author and she's a social entrepreneur. And her name is Olamidotun Votu-Bada. Thank you again for this conversation. I look forward to more. And of course, I hope it will not be as early as this for you. I know you said you're used to it, but in my mind, I just feel like, yeah, it's early. It's early. All right. Next week, we'll return with another conversation on Soul Sisters from 11 till 11:50 on Smooth 98.1. 12 o'clock will be the time for me to play you great African music, 4 hours of great African music from different countries. And that will be on the Casbah. My name is Oluwaseun Olusegun. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Sean. Thanks a lot. I saw that I should have set the orientation on Zoom. It was looking on YouTube. It was my face was up front. I didn't even realize that.
Up front? No.
Yeah, I just saw on YouTube. You know how YouTube changes the orientation.
Oh, it does? I'm not aware
Yeah.
of that.
No, it does that sometimes. I didn't realize, like, it was